It's the Boris Dirk podcast. Welcome back, everybody. We are a couple weeks into the NBA season, and some trends are starting to emerge. And one trend that has emerged above everything is there's only one undefeated team left in the NBA, and that is the Cleveland Cavaliers at 9-0. So we thought it would be fun to bring on Spencer Davies, who does a ton of Cavs content, post-game shows, uh, beat reports, interviews, podcasts, everything that you could possibly want from coverage of a local team. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Drew Semler, and welcoming into the show, Spencer Davies. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. I appreciate you guys having me on. Like I said before we started recording this, you guys go to Stanford, so you're a lot smarter than me. I'm just somebody who's around the team taking videos and getting the temperature of this 9-0 Cavs team that's just together. They're connected and they're just having a blast right now, and it's just been fun to be a part of the ride.
I saw Jared Allen's last post-game, the 9-0 post-game talk on the court. He said, a lot of teams don't get this privilege to be with the guys that you were with last year. It shows how we are willing to fight for each other, how we are willing to go any length to get the win together. And I thought those were like underratedly heavy comments. It makes me think that like we were closer to seeing a vastly differently shaped Cavs team this year. Can you talk about the ending of last season, morale being pretty low, and everything that seems to have changed energetically in Cleveland?
Well, starting with the playoffs last year, I think they kind of felt like there was some unfinished business there. Donovan Mitchell was hurt, didn't play the last few games. Karis LeVert was hurt, and they had to really kind of dig deep and get the best out of the guys who really were kind of worn down and weren't at their best. And that starts with Darius Garland, who last season was not himself, missed a ton of games because he ran into Kristaps Porzingis' hip and broke his jaw, had to drink through a straw for like 2 weeks, drink and eat through a straw for like 2 or 3 weeks, had the unfortunate family incident where he lost a loved one. And it just kind of piled on, and he lost his joy for the game. And he's kind of talked about that before he came into the season, and talking about this year, how he's playing more with a clear mind. Evan Mobley was not nearly in the same realm as where he was this season as he was last year, but we saw glimpses of it in the Boston series where he had a little bit more usage. He was able to kind of attack and get downhill more. Kenny Eckes is just accentuating that. That's the reason Kenny is in Cleveland, is because of the development of Darius Garland and Evan Mobley. I mean, you can just forget about Donovan and Jarrett, because those guys are already kind of cemented in the league. They know their roles. But, I mean, Kenny's just kind of got there's so many things that you can talk about with the diversification of this offense, and how there's multiple ball handlers. And on the defensive end, how they're just covering for each other. And then there's just switching a little bit more of an emphasis on transition and getting out into the open floor, getting to the foul line, trying to get to the foul line. They're second in drives with 22nd in free throw attempts, so make that one make sense. But yeah, it's just building on what they have already kind of had the foundation with, and that's where JB Bickerstaff does get the credit. They had a defensive identity. They were just a little too predictable on the offensive end, too much pick and roll, where teams could just kind of double and send blitzes and really make it hard on the one or two ball handlers that had the opportunities to try to initiate the offense. This season, you got almost everybody on the floor who's able to initiate. Everybody's touching it. And the shot attempts, if you look at the numbers, just how equal everything is with the field goal attempts and the minute load. It's just kind of everybody eats. I know that's a saying that the Washington Wizards had, 5-6 years ago, but it's true in Cleveland right now. Everybody's eating and enjoying the ride, and you can look at their bench, you can look at the starters. Like, it doesn't matter. They're picking each other up when they're down, and when they're up, they're just kind of feeding off of one another.
Yeah, that's one of the things that really sticks out when looking through all the sort of background numbers on this team. No one's averaging more than 31 minutes a game right now, which and depth has been a major key across the league for all the teams that are doing really well right now. Like OKC goes, 11 deep. Boston is super deep. Cleveland has been going 10 deep with a lot of guys playing close to or above 20 minutes a game. Golden State, with their sort of hot, surprising start, is a really deep team. All the teams that we're seeing doing really well have sort of accentuated that depth, and Cleveland's no different. And I guess Atkinson has sort of ties to that Budenholzer coaching tree, where back in the day, Giannis would be in the low 30s in minutes per game, and Atkinson seems to be kind of carrying that over with keeping his star minutes level low. And you can do that when you have, shooters like Sam Merrill off the bench and different options between Karis LeVert, Dean Wade, Ty Jerome, just all these different guys who can get on the floor and positively impact the game. The other number, sort of going back and forth between last year's stats and this year's stats. Last year, 24th in pace. This year, 12th in pace so far, which, still not like elite of the elite, but going from 24 to 12 is a huge improvement. And in talking about making the offense faster paced, more unpredictable, that would certainly go a long way towards that. And then, wasn't just Garland last year, as you mentioned, Mitchell and Mobley missing time. Mitchell, not only in the playoffs, but only played 55 games in the regular season, Mobley 50. So that lower minutes load should help keep those guys a little bit fresher as the season goes along as well. Drew?
Yeah, I feel like there are very few gimmicks with this team. It's the best offense in the league by a lot of measures, but you're 17th in three-point attempts, as you mentioned, in the 20s in free throw attempts. You're 30th in offensive rebounds, which just tells me Kenny Atkinson is saying, like, we're getting back. Defensive transition D is like a huge emphasis this year, which last year when a lot of things went wrong, like you said, a lot of it was just injuries. But also, I'll be honest, there were times I watched this team and I loved the Cavs last year. I said all season, if they can just get healthy, this team is as talented as anyone after Boston in the East. There was a little bit of a competitive will issue at the very end, even despite the issues. Like, they weren't getting set on defense. They were turning the ball over, and now they're getting back, sacrificing offensive rebounds to be a more stable defense. And like I said, no gimmicks. First in assist to turnover ratio. And they're cleaning up on the defensive boards, but it just seems like a structured team playing with a lot more joy, which at the end of last year, like, it looked like a team that could look very different this year. But I think you mentioned, like, in terms of the Evan Mobley jump, he was kind of the last man standing last year, it felt like, versus Boston, and just played his absolute tail off and showed a lot of stuff on offense. Showed like that there might be a real uptick in polish going into this season. Can you talk specifically about Mobley, his offensive game, and what you think is particularly different this year?
They want more out of him, believe it or not. He's going to be bringing the ball up. He's going to be rebounding and running and initiating. They really don't care too much about the outside shot right now. He's just a facilitator. He's somebody with the ball in his hands, making sure that he sees when guys are in the corners, like Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell have been told, go to the corners when Evan Mobley has the ball in his hands. Set screens for the guy. Play a little bit of that two-man game with Jared Allen that we've seen before with high-low pick and roll, or just passing out of the pocket. He can play off of it. He can bring it up. He's just got so many different ways to make you hurt. But the big leap this year has just kind of been using his strength to get downhill. And when he's getting downhill with momentum, kind of reminds you of that guy in Milwaukee a little bit. He's just got those long legs, those long strides. When you see him in the fast break situation, look the hell out. He had a sequence the other night against that Bucks team when Giannis was sitting out, but Mobley gets a rebound, Mobley doesn't get a rebound. Mobley blocks a guy with his left hand, gets his own rebound, runs the full court about 70 feet, and dunks on a dude with his left hand. That's the kind of growth that these Cavs have seen from Evan Mobley already, and it's not fully complete. He's still turning the ball over. Some of his timing's a little bit off, but he's not just being used as a pick and roll guy at high on the court. He's not just sitting in the dunker spot. He's actively doing things. He's actively initiating things, and they're getting more out of Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell and their ability to play off ball. And the same goes for whoever's in the three spot, whether it's Isaac Okoro or Dean Wade or Karis LeVert. They're getting more out of everybody because Evan's the one who feels like he's in the play. He's in the action. And if the initial action doesn't work, there's a sub action, and then there's a sub action for a sub action. Like, there's so many different routes they can go with this guy, and it's not just, oh, he has to stretch the floor. No, it's more of the Draymond Green ilk. It's more of the Giannis ilk. Like, and yeah, he can still play high pick and roll. He can still be used in the pocket. That's fine because he's good at passing. But that's the skill that Kenny Atkinson wanted to utilize the most is his vision. And when he gets downhill with momentum, and that's a lot to handle if you're an opposing center or an opposing guard who gets switched onto him. So they're not just hunting mismatches. They're not just playing high pick and roll with either of the bigs, by the way. Like even Jared Allen's facilitating a little bit more. They're making sure everyone's touching the ball, including the bigs, and it's been a huge help. And just one thing, too, earlier, I know this isn't the topic, but Drew, I thought it was interesting that you're talking about the offensive rebounding being at the bottom of the league right now.
Yeah.
They're actually trying to crash the offensive boards better. So that's a place that they're wanting to get better. They want to get better there. They want to be better at not fouling, and they want to be better at taking care of the basketball as a whole. Now, Darius Garland's doing a great job of taking care of the basketball. Donovan's had a little bit of issues there, but Evan Mobley's up there as well with the turnover. So those are the things that they're trying to capitalize on and get better at. So just wanted to clarify on that end because they do want to play good transition defense, but they're trying to get as many possessions as they possibly can because that's the modern NBA.
Yep. Yeah, and Evan Mobley, numbers back up sort of his increased role on offense. He's got a career high usage, career high 17 points a game. If you look at like per 100 possessions data, which can be sort of useful since the Cavs are playing at such a different pace and also the minutes loads are pretty low. He's shooting about 4.5 times a game or per 100 possessions more than he was last year and about a 3 more as well. So he's taking more threes. His efficiency is like a little bit down compared to previous years, but that sort of comes with growing the usage and stretching the shot out a little bit. I want to talk about sort of the perennially underrated member of the sort of core four in Cleveland, Jared Allen.
Thank you for recognizing it because I don't know if anybody around here appreciates him as much as I do in this space. He is so underappreciated, so kind of overlooked when people talk about the core four. I think he's the most steady guy on the team. I think he's the most energetic and joyful player to watch on this team, honestly.
Yeah, and Mobley is a great defensive player, but a lot of what the Cavs have been able to do defensively over the course of this sort of core of guys where they've perennially been towards the top of the league in defense is because they have 2 of those elite rim protectors. And Jared Allen is sort of the other one. He's anchoring everything physically on the interior as well. Have you seen any kind of dramatic changes in the way he's being used this year compared to previous years? Or do you think he's just sort of always been underrated, but steadily going along as he's always been?
Offensively, not really. I just see improved footwork. He's got a really nice jump hook. He's actually kind of added a Euro step to his game. If you look at some of the film, it's pretty too. Like whether it's in transition or if he's getting a pass in the pocket from Darius Garland or whoever he's running the action with. But he does. He has kind of a nice sidestep. So keep an eye out for that one. He's not really shooting jumpers. It's not like he's a go-to guy offensively, but he is one of the most reliable players, I think, over the last 3-4 years when he's inside. He's able to finish through traffic. He's able to dunk on your head. He can just kind of finish those plays inside. And you look at his field goal percentage over his career, like he is just somebody who's extremely efficient. He is not taking a ton of shots a game, but when he takes them, he's going 6 for 7, 10 of 12. Like those are the kind of stat lines you see from Jared Allen on the offensive end. And you got to take into effect too the screens that he sets and how well he rolls to the rim and is just such a good rim runner when they're running the floor. On the other end, there is a little bit of a difference. So he's always the defensive anchor for the Cavs on most possessions. But when he's not, Kenny's having a little bit more faith in him to have him switch out onto the guards more a little bit. Kind of using him like Evan Mobley has been used. He's allowing him a little bit more freedom to guard guys who are a little bit faster, a little bit quicker because he's confident that Evan Mobley can protect the rim if Jarrett does get beat. Or if Evan Mobley isn't protecting the rim and is switched on to somebody else, then one of the guys on the wings, like Isaac Okoro or a Dean Wade or a Karis LeVert, can cut off a drive enough so that he can get back into position to be that defensive anchor. So everybody's kind of multi-tool on this team right now. Offensively, defensively, they're not just kind of pigeonholed into one role, which I think is making them have a lot of fun because they're not just doing the same things over and over again. They're keeping the same identity. They're still scoring off of defensive steals, deflections, and all that stuff, but they're doing it in different ways, it seems like, every night. And it's maintaining this identity of just kind of turning those stops into points.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Jared is just the absolute ideal elite role player to have next to your 25+% usage rate guys, Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. Like, for Jared Allen to go back to the drawing board after that tough 2023 round one versus New York, where the Knicks kind of dominated them. The Cavs were obviously favored in that series. And then you got to hear so many questions about, can Mobley and Allen play in a functional offense that can go deep in the playoffs? Do you need to choose one of them? Is Jared Allen one of these centers whose value like cuts in half when you get to playoff time? And Jared Allen emerged last year with like a much better left hand. Like you said, doing all the things he can out of the pocket, just the comfortability with the ball in his hands. He's still a sub 20% usage rate guy, but it just feels like he's so in control with the ball in his hands now. And obviously, like, a lot of the things that make him special are stuff that don't involve holding the ball. He's still an elite rebounder. And subtly, like, I saw someone mention on Twitter recently, like, that he's so good for a 6'9" center. I think he's 6'9" without shoes. He's actually like 6'10" plus in shoes with like a 7'5" wingspan. And he's got just sort of a typical standing reach for an NBA center. But God, like, does he play even bigger than that? Like, his presence on the court for this team feels more like 7'1", 7'2", because he's so active. And plays through contact as well as anyone on this team. Also, interestingly, on the defensive end, I just wanted to mention Donovan Mitchell has been awesome on offense, as he has been for, feels like, 7-8 years now. But Donovan Mitchell, according to Dunks and Threes, is kind of a positive defender for the first time in a while. And he's just giving them things on the defensive end, showing effort that hasn't always been there in his Cavs tenure. People have always talked about how Donovan Mitchell theoretically should be a solid defender, like with his crazy wingspan and elite athleticism. Like, there's no reason he should be a real liability on that end. Kenny Atkinson comes in with a reputation for being offense first. He's kind of like an offensive coordinator type coach. And it seems like he's bringing out defensive effort in these guards that just like the Cavs have needed to take that next step. Has there been much talk about that in Cleveland circles?
Ton of it. Preseason, I was probably one of the first people to say, and people looked at me kind of funny, and was like, look out for Darius Garland on the defensive end this year, right? What they're doing is they're building on an identity that JB Bickerstaff already kind of established. And that's where he does deserve credit, because last year, I feel like Donovan Mitchell actually had a really good defensive year. This year, Darius Garland's being a part of it, and Donovan's just carrying it on. I feel like the Cavs know that Evan Mobley and Jared Allen are back there. They know that one of Isaac Okoro, Karis LeVert, or Dean Wade is good enough to cut off drives and to defend on ball and to have that kind of savvy to play off ball if they need them. So Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, they're allowed to crank up that ball pressure. They're allowed to kind of get into guys' shirts, take a few kind of swings, take a few kind of risks to see if you can get a pick six here or there. Because what happens if you get beat? You still got some really good, solid rim protection behind you, and guys that aren't going to let the opponents get deep into the paint. So, it's kind of like, guys, just go out there. Go. You liken it to an offensive coordinator. Let's say for a defensive coordinator, let's blitz. Let's try to get a sack here, and our secondary will take care of it. And what happens is, when those guys are out on the perimeter and they have so much ball pressure on them, Darius Garland's playing like a corner. He's getting pick six. Donovan Mitchell is getting steals. not just in the passing lanes. He's even just ripping it away from guys. Like he's strong. Darius Garland's gotten stronger, but he's more of kind of the guy that picks you off. For a touchdown on the other end, which is obviously 2 points, or something they've been emphasizing this year, the walk up three in transition, which one he hit yesterday against the Pelicans in perfect sync with he had it was almost 1-on-3 and he still pulled up a three and hit a triple. So like those are the kind of philosophical differences that we're seeing in that situation. But yeah, they are. The guards are being a lot more physical. They're being a lot more into guys' shirts than they are, kind of being on their toes or letting guys kind of drive by them, because they know they have help behind them. And they're, again, like I said in the beginning, they're covering for one another. So they have help. They've got some really good guys laterally on their feet to kind of shift the way that I don't know if you caught last night, but the way that they were kind of trying to cut Zion's drives off, the way Zion got his points through the free throw line yesterday, and when he got too deep into the paint. When he was trying to drive from the wing, no. He was getting kind of forced to take angles that he didn't want to take. Same with Brandon Ingram. Brandon Ingram had 20 points last night, but that was on 20 shots. And Isaac Okoro was in his grills. Karis LeVert, Evan Mobley, when they switch onto those guys. So, like, they have kind of this depth and this, like I said earlier, multiple tool defense and offense that they know the next guy is going to pick the other guy up in case they do get beat. But most of the time, they're not getting beat.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't even have Max Strus yet, who's a big part of...
Or Dean Wade's been missing the last couple of games. And then before that, Karis LeVert was out a few games. So I think also Dean Wade's going to help with that offensive rebound rate. That's something that they've really emphasized to him in training camp, and I think the first few games he did a good job of. But yeah, they've got so much depth on this team, and I mean, you even look at a guy like Craig Porter Jr., who the last 3 games has played 5 minutes each. Okay, you say, oh, whatever. They were very, very important minutes, especially in New Orleans, where he goes out and gets 2 blocks and kind of gets the pace going. Like, can we talk about Ty Jerome? Like, what an outstanding pickup that they had last year. He played 2 games, and then he was out for the rest of the season because of a freak ankle injury. And, this season, he's really come in, calmed things down. He plays at his own pace. He has a very slick, slow step, able to find guys as a true point guard, but also pull up threes and just kind of gets guys off balance. He's been terrific for them, too. Like, Sam Merrill makes these like back-breaking threes that kill teams whenever they make runs. Like, and he's even being, I thought this was interesting, he's even being used as a screener when he's in these main lineups to drag the other team's worst defender into actions so they get switched on to some of the Cavs' best offensive players. Like, that's the person would see, okay, Sam Merrill, good 3-point shooter. What he does is space the floor. No, he's got these guys off ball, moving and really drawing attention in different ways. You even have gravity with cuts and with rolls. Like, teams are reacting to these in real time. And when you make the threes on the outside and the threat of the perimeter, it just opens up a world for Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland to penetrate, and you know what they do. So it's just it's all clicking. And I'm sorry for being long-winded here, but like, there's just so many different ways you can look at this team and what they're doing right. And like you said, they're not even at full strength. They've been missing Max Strus too.
Huge Craig Porter fan over here. Maybe the best shot blocking undersized guard I've seen in a while.
A dog. A dog. Goes and scraps for rebounds. He doesn't care. I don't know if you remember last year, he went and attacked Joel Embiid on the baseline and won in Philly. Like, I love that dude's dog.
But outside of him, like, all the guys you just mentioned are in that 6'5", 6'6" range plus. And like, I watched CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard try to make it work in Portland for a long time. Like, these are the sort of athletes and size you got to surround your smaller backcourt with. And it's clicking right now. But it wasn't always clicking last year. And before we go into, we'll close out with like what you expect for this team, what your hopes are and expectations for the rest of the year. And you don't have to give away any state secrets unless you want to. There were rumors in the media about Darius Garland potentially going somewhere else. Everyone wanted him to be Wemby's point guard. There were rumors about Jared Allen when things weren't looking good in Cleveland. Do you get the feeling that it was ever close to a player breakup and not just a coach transition?
I don't, because initially I did, but
Yeah.
they're really transparent with the media here. Like Kobe Altman's very transparent. Darius Garland came out and flat out said on media day that the trade rumors, he doesn't know where it came from. He was really kind of down about it. Immediately, Kobe Altman called him and they had a conversation about no, you're our guy. Relax. This isn't happening or anything like that. Maybe on the Jared Allen end, I'm not sure, depending on how much you believe the Pelicans rumor that they were trying to get a wing from them or something like that. But initially, yes, I thought that after that and the sour feeling and not knowing that JB was going to be canned, that yes, maybe there was a player that was going to be moved if JB was going to be retained. Once JP got canned, that kind of simmered down a little bit because they wanted to just kind of reimagine the offense that's been playing and that's been growing in front of your very eyes so far. So I don't know if it was a for sure thing, but there were definitely swirlings around here. And where there's smoke, there's fire. I mean, there's definitely a chance that maybe they were looking at a Brandon Ingram type, or like they were trying to look at a Devin Vassell, like the one that's popping around a lot on Twitter now that I don't quite understand especially after the start, maybe in the preseason or in the offseason, was Jeremy Grant. But Jeremy Grant makes a ton of money. Like, I don't know about, that. Like there's such an obsession that every team has to do it the same way. You need a big wing in the playoffs to guard all these guys. And I understand that. And, until it's proven, then they're right to have those kind of concerns and that pessimism. However, I'll leave you with this. Kenny Atkinson was asked the other day about Evan Mobley, about, being a big and whatnot. He was like, well, he's more kind of like a wing because he's got guard skills and he's able to switch a little bit more and he's comfortable with the ball in his hands and can initiate and do all these other different things. So I found that interesting because what if Evan's that guy? What if Evan's the one that's going to guard the other team's best player, or best wing, I should say, and stop them in that situation? Because if that's the case, I think that it's viable. Like, guys, let's not forget, you look at the Magic last year, everyone thought that the Cavs should wipe the floor with them. The Magic were a lot better. And we know why now, because Paolo Banchero, my God, the way he started the season, it sucks that he's hurt and he's out the next few months. But that guy's a dog. That dude's a star. And that team was hungry to show that they belonged on that platform. Cavs had to close them out in the 7th game. It was not a pretty way to go about it, but can we forget? Do we forget that they were fighting their tails off in Boston? Took one in Boston, by the way, and gave that team a little bit of an issue, despite what the series says. Like, those were hard fought games, and it's so easy to come to that conclusion. But Boston, they ran the other teams out the building in the playoffs. So like, there was a core there that was very, very established on the defensive end. They were worn down at the end of the year. And part of the reason that Kenny Atkinson was also brought in, guys, is to make sure that the management of those minutes is a lot better. They want to make sure their guys are fresh going into April. They want to make sure that there's no wear and tear knee injuries or kind of, chippy injuries or what have you going into the playoffs, because they need their guys at their best at that time. And if you shave 3 to 4 minutes per game off of those guys' minutes load, I don't know what the math is. You do 82 times 3 or 82 times 4 and see what the difference is, because it adds up over time. And you use your depth and you have those minutes kind of accounted for. You're going to be a lot better off going into the playoffs.
Absolutely. And the East is wide open this year. Like, there's only 2 teams in the East.
1, 2, and then the rest are all 500 or a game under 500 right now.
Yeah. And outside of Boston, if you're Cleveland, there isn't a team in the East that's really like scaring you all that much right now. Orlando's a tough matchup because of sort of their overall size and physicality, but there's, in some of the more physical front lines that might be able to push some of the Cavs players around in the way that like happened in 2022. And the Cavs are more mature now as well, so they're less susceptible to that. But that team also isn't really out there. Like a lot of the East teams are kind of more on the finesse side with Indiana and Boston, and New York's more of a finesse team now as well. So Cleveland, I think, should have really high aspirations going into these playoffs. I don't know if real quick you could speak to any internal expectations or what you think this Cavs team may be destined for in the playoffs.
I think for Cavs fans, it's really good because this team understands that it's only November. Donovan, anytime someone says something positive to him in the locker room, he goes, "We're not doing that. We're not doing that. It's November." Like, they know and they understand. And something that Kenny mentioned when someone asked him what was so impressive or what was the thing that stands out about this undefeated start to the season is there's a quiet confidence. They know they're good, but there's a humility. And I thought that struck me because he's like, it's almost like there's not a chip on these guys' shoulder. They just know they have to take the next step, but they know they're good. And that's a dangerous quality to have. If they stay healthy and this is the continuous mindset they have, that's tough to kind of get out of guys, because when you see something working and when you see something that is fun and you're playing the game you love and you're sharing it with your friends and stuff like that, like that goes beyond the box score. That is a true bond. And when you have that and you compare it to past teams, I think I saw a graphic on SportsCenter about certain teams that start 9-0 and have 120 plus points per game that they're averaging or something like that. That was on the level of like a Wilt team or something. And you gotta take it with a grain of salt for sure, because they have played some undermanned opponents. However, these are not situations where they're just steamrolling guys. They've been in plenty of adverse situations already. They were down in the Bucks games, both. One on the road and then also one at home. They were down by 8 and they showed resilience. They were down at Madison Square Garden a couple of weeks ago and came out victorious, which was a really fun win. And they've kind of seen it all. They've kind of seen the situations. The opponents, yes, they're going to get tougher, but I don't think this is a mirage. I think this is very real, and they've got to sustain it. It's got to be consistent. And I'm interested to see what it looks like when we get into the coming months, because I'm sure as hell I'm enjoying it. I'm having a blast covering this team right now. And there's just the whole is the part. Wait, was it the sum is the part of its whole, or I forget how it goes.
Greater than the part.
yeah. Thank you very much. See, you guys went to Stanford. Like I said, I went to Akron. but shout out Enrique Freeman. But the collective nature of this group is what makes it so special. And I think that the team recognizes it, and Kenny recognizes it, the staff recognizes it, and there's something special brewing. So keep an eye on them.
Yeah, I love what you said about Mobley as maybe the wing, like the apex wing that takes this team to the next level, hiding in plain sight. I'm excited for November 19th at Boston. You talked about the flashes versus Boston last year. I hope that's a national game. It deserves to be. It's going to be a really interesting litmus test. Who knows if the Cavs are undefeated at that point, whether or not they're undefeated. I think that matchup will tell us a lot about the top of the East right now.
Yeah, no, I think this matchup Friday commands a lot of attention. Hot Warriors team,
Yeah.
Younger, more athletic, still have that crazy superstar Steph Curry doing his thing. Never, any love lost for the Warriors when they come into Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. So I'm really excited to cover that game on Friday. That's probably their biggest test to this point. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes. Their depth, I'll tell you what, Golden State's depth can definitely compete with the Cavs' depth. They've got some really solid guys coming off the bench. I mean, you look at Buddy Hield, Kevon Looney, I think, is always somebody that doesn't get enough love as just a big body. And then, Kuminga coming off the bench now, and it seems like he's really found a niche there. And you talk about, Eastern Conference, teams that can compete with the Cavs, at the top. Like, again, I hate getting ahead of myself, but I think New York's going to get better. Miami always seems to be in the picture. Indiana, they've kind of been here or there. They've got to really, ratchet up the defense, in my opinion. But Orlando is probably out of the picture now that Paolo's gone for a couple of months. It's hard to stay in there. I think Atlanta could be sneaky. And to be honest, I don't know if I'm buying what I'm seeing in Charlotte, but they are a ton of fun right now. No lie. But the Bucks and the Sixers, they've got time. They've got time to right the ship. I think the Sixers more than anything will be in a better spot than maybe the Bucks are. But hopefully the Bucks realize the duo with Dame and Giannis, they need to do more of what they did last Saturday and just kind of play off of one another in the pick and roll situations. Giannis is a passer, and make sure that each of them are getting their turns. But yeah, right now it's Cleveland and Boston and a bunch of 500 teams, but I do not suspect it's going to stay that way. The parity in this league is too great, and you got to respect it.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, Spencer, thank you so much for coming on. We look forward to following the rest of your Cavs coverage this year and seeing where the Cavs go from here. Because, yeah, as you say, it's been a really fun start to watch, and it seems really sustainable. So, yeah, it's been great following you.
Max, Drew, thanks so much for having me on. Sorry for taking over your podcast and making it mine. but I would like to plug, though, we do have a new podcast over at Cavs on SI. It's called Courtside Cavs on SI. You go find it on our YouTube channel. You can subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I also do post-game shows on most nights, again, on that YouTube or whatever you see on Twitter and stuff like that. I'm sorry, again, I apologize for taking over your podcast. They're just so fun.
Come on, man. That's why we have you on.
They're so fun to talk about right now. I could do this for days. But also, if I could just kind of plug my own stuff.
Please.
My work's everywhere. This is the life of a freelancer. I do draft profiles for BabcockHoops.com. Really, really nice site that's gotten rebooted. Matt Babcock really giving me an opportunity to do some really fun work. So make sure to look for my story on Asa Newell, one of the top freshmen in the country playing for Georgia. Had a really good conversation with him and his dad before the season. So check that out. Also, Responsible Gambler, rg.org. That's where you're going to find my national NBA features. Just talked to a bunch of guys in the past 3 weeks. Montas Buzelis, Ron Holland, Anthony Black is my latest one because he's going to have to step up for the Orlando Magic.
Woo!
So
Love
check
him.
those out. Yep, I was going to say, man, nobody knows that, I swear, that I do NBA national coverage. Everybody is following me for my cast stuff, so I'm trying to get as best as I can to promote my other stuff because I have like three or four jobs.
We're draft nuts, so we're gonna have to have you back on and talk about prospects.
Yeah.
Oh man, hey, I'm just the guy that pulls back the curtain and lets you know. If you want the draft guy, I'll send you over to Matt. Matt will give you everything. I'm the guy who peels back the curtain, tells you about the upbringing and all that stuff. Like that's more of his jam. But I do enjoy watching college ball. And as we were talking about before we brought this up, big Akron Zip. So make sure the blue and gold get some love on this pod this year too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everyone, and his handle on Twitter is @SpinDavies. We'll put that in the bio of our episode, but follow him and see all the stuff he's offering, and the coverage is prime. So yeah, thank you so much, Spencer, for coming on. And yeah, hope to keep in touch.
Appreciate y'all, man.
Boris Dirk.